Hello, it's Rayhan, and if you're watching this video, it's probably because you've already seen the UIL demo speech. So in this video, I'm basically just going to analyze what I did in that speech, like what I did well and what I didn't do well. So let's start off with what I didn't do well. And I would say overall, like while it was a pretty solid speech, my delivery probably could have been a bit better. As you saw, I stumbled a couple of times and my body positioning and gesturing wasn't the best, but it was still a pretty good model for you to follow. If you're just watching the speech, just look how I walk, look kind of how I use my hands, although in that specific speech it wasn't the best, but it's still good to follow. But now let's talk about the actual speech itself. So let's start with the intro. My intro wasn't the best, but it got its job done. And while it was kind of a cliche intro that could be applied to a lot of scenarios, it's still better than no intro, especially considering that I wrapped it back up at the end. It's an intro I didn't have to spend too much time on, so from that point of view, it was pretty effective. Now let's go on to the background, which is especially important for an extem speech, where I kind of set up how Brazil's universal healthcare system is so important because it's the largest in the world, and where I mentioned the background about protesting. That's vital towards the speech because it established the exigence of the question, and that's something every good extem speech should include. So going to my answer itself, as you can see, I had an umbrella answer, which was that Bolsonaro is just perpetuating existing problems. That's an umbrella that I then fit my 3 points under, which was corruption, economic turmoil, and the lack of medical professionals. So talking about my analysis overall, I would say analysis-wise, it was a pretty solid speech, with the weakest analysis perhaps being under the economic point. Yet, if you can notice this, and it's good to notice when you watch my speech, is notice how I set up a broad problem, such as corruption, and I kind of talk about how it exists in the status quo, how it exists inside of Brazil, and then I relate it back to the healthcare. It's kind of like an A and B. A, I'm telling you that corruption in Brazil exists. B, I'm telling you why that corruption is bad for the healthcare system. It follows a logical flow of reasoning that hopefully made my speech really easy to follow and understand and really agreeable too, but it's something that a lot of you guys' speeches are missing, which is that A and B hit. My point can't just be corruption is taking away money from Brazil, because while that's my overall point, I still have to establish like there's corruption in Brazil, which is important to establish first, and then I have to establish how that's impacting healthcare. It's important to recognize that kind of analysis, and that follows through to all my points. My second point is there's a bad economy inside of Brazil, and then I talk about how that economy affects the healthcare system. And once again, there's a lack of medical professionals in Brazil. Then I talk about how that's bad for the healthcare system. That one's a little bit more intuitive, which is why it's my third point. It's the strongest point, but overall, I hope that it's easy to see the analysis there. And then going back to my conclusion, I kind of just wrap it up. I relate back to the intro. As far as that was solid. My transitions were pretty good. I think my third transition, I didn't really have a transition, as you could see, but I tried to make like a little sarcastic thing about how Bolsonaro hasn't realized that you need doctors to run hospitals, and it was still pretty effective. So I hope that shows you how you don't need an amazing joke to be in transition. If you just say something sarcastically or just point out like a relevant fact, it can still look smooth. And so hopefully that helps you as far as analysis for the speech, and hopefully watching it, you can get some of the things that I did well inside of the speech and maybe take that away.